Hello everybody, it's been a while. So, almost 3 months ago, patch 6.2 came out and we got a brand new raid tier along with other content. But now that it's all behind us as we prepare for a really nice ride with patch 6.3, I wanted to get my thoughts on the tier out there. So, I'm gonna start this off by saying that the music this year was way better than what we had in Asphodelos when you compare the overall quality of Pandaemonium to the previous tiers, like Eden, for example. Of course, it's not as impressive as Eden, but it's a bit better than what we got in Asphodelos. Proto Carbuncle was a really straightforward fight with a lot of similarities to the normal version. It was not anything that could block your progress, even if you're in Party Finder, but that's almost always the case with the first fight of a tier. Um, Aside from Devour and Ruby Glow 5, there were not any noticeable mechanics in this fight, although each mechanic throughout the encounter was very much capable of throwing you off, which could result in a death. For example, noticing the pattern wrong, like making a mistake when you notice a pattern on Ruby 3 or accidentally greeting a GCD or moving into the unsafe area on Ruby 2 with the double dash. So yeah, it was also really easy to snap into the Devour AoE jumps, and that still happens to me sometimes, but the point is that the mechanic itself fundamentally was not really something to be concerned about. Uh, when it comes to Devour, I mostly had an issue with retaining the clockwise and counterclockwise pattern, so had to get it down again during week 2 or 3, I'm not sure. But after that, it stuck with me. Not sure if this is gonna make any sense, but realizing that it was the first jump in both the clockwise and counterclockwise cycle that was safe made all of the difference for me. Moving on to Ruby 5, this mechanic was a bit of a problem for me in Party Finder as a tank because groups were constantly switching out the tank positions for whatever reason, and they're still doing it, by the way. Um, like, just keep the tanks inside the hitbox and melees at max. It's all about simplicity, but honestly, I'm pretty sure that's a concept which is foreign to Party Finder. I don't know, PF will be PF. As a physical range though, of course, it was really easy as all I had to do was go into the corner. And honestly, this is probably the only position which remained a constant for me in Party Finder. Overall though, the encounter was decent on the rating scale, nothing special, but it wasn't as impressive for me as Ericthonios in PVNS fourfold chains, intemperance, that phase with the red and blue tiles. All of that combined with the aesthetic of PVNS just really puts that fight above Carbuncle for me. Not to mention, if memory serves me right, I'm pretty sure that Ericthonios did not have any forced downtime. And I'm just not a fan of that, to be honest. And we all know B5S has Devour. So that's pretty much it for Carbuncle. The second encounter of this tier though, it was a fair bit more enjoyable than P5S. If I were to compare it to Hippocampus in P2, the fight design of P2 would be a little above Hegemony, in my opinion, just because of the whole arena setup, the arena design, and how the mechanics were handled in respect to the arena. That's pretty much the only thing. That's not to say that P6S was not good, because it was really fun. Plus, my experience in Party Finder wasn't all that bad either, even with Cachexia 1 and 2, back when the tier was fresh. The first couple of mechanics of that fight, like pathogenic cells, the first poly, they were fairly easy since people have seen enough variations of these mechanics in other fights to know how they work. The one thing I did struggle with in the fight was figuring out the safe spots and the rhythm of the mechanic. in Poly 5 and 6, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember the number of the poly mechanic, but it was the one with the long and short tether and the two polys after that. Cachexia 1 and 2, on the other hand, though, they were fun mechanics, very much like the limit cut thing from P2 or Fountain of Fire in P3S. And yes, I'm one of those people who genuinely enjoyed P3S despite of its color issues and all the other stuff. But yeah, like there's not really much to say here for Hegemony and Protocarbuncle, other than they were really decent fights with a non-existent DPS check, even during week 1. I'm not sure how much of that can be attributed to players having an extra weapon or, the 900 tombstones, but if I'm being honest, I don't think it was way too big of a deal, considering that you would still have to press buttons properly while resolving mechanics to deal damage. But yeah, that's about it for the second turn. Moving on to P7S, Abyssos, I've got a lot to say about this, but I won't, because if I had to sum it all up into one word, that word would be boring, honestly. I got to Purgation during week 1 before I ended up killing my computer, actually. That's a short story for another time, but yeah, Purgation in week 1 was really interesting. It was a lot more chaotic than anything in P3S during week 1, but my god. This fight, for me personally, was just the epitome of boredom, and all around it was just a snooze fest. I don't really have anything good at all to say about this fight, and not only did the developers mess up the arena design, which led to the problems with strats and markers, we're all aware of that. Something that is entirely on the developers, in my opinion, and I'm glad it was fixed later on, but the pacing of this fight, along with the mechanics, it was not as engaging as the encounters before it. Now P3S honestly was a lot more fun than what we got with this tree. The fight starts out slow, it kept that pace up. Purgation was the one part that was really decent, fairly decent. And then you got to the harvests, which they were basically all of the forbidden fruit mechanics put together. And that's all that the fight was, all it had to offer. Plus it had that 1 or 2 second forced downtime as well, and like I said, I'm not a fan of that unless the mechanic is fresh, it's creative, it's enjoyable, and none of that was in that fight. It was just bland and boring and just caused you to fall asleep. For me, it was a huge disappointment, and while P3S may have had the issues with its color and everything, I still take that over Abyssos any day without even thinking for a second. But that's all for P7S. The best part, the highlight of this year by far, of course, P8S Asphodelos. Not only was the door boss fair yet challenging, and although also had a fair bit of curse, but the second phase of this fight was just top of the line aesthetic with some really engaging fresh mechanics, and that not only were extremely enjoyable for me personally, but they were also very were kind of on the creative side of things, something that I personally haven't seen yet in Final Fantasy. And I've been playing for 4 years-ish, 5 years-ish, I'm not sure. And yeah, after all that, the music in part 2 was absolutely phenomenal. So first off, I'm gonna talk about Snake 1 and 2. Some of my friends, they're not really fan of Gabe's mechanics, but I personally found both of those Snake variations to be really engaging as far as mechanics go. And in fact, I would even say that they were, the most prominent mechanics of part 1. Fourfold Fire, Dog 1 and 2, they were just pale in comparison. Of course, Snake was the bane of Party Finder, led to the creation of a lot of weird strats and marker setups, but that's not really a problem. It's part of the package, so to say. But you guys get the point, right? There was nothing in part 1 and 2 that was as brain numbing as P7S. During prog, I of course decided to play it safe and always drop the GCD if I ever got gazed during the snake phase because I can't wiggle due to being on a controller. But after getting used to the mechanic, I figured out that it was easy enough to sort of keep your GCD rolling while you turn around for the gaze if you play at 2.5 skill speed. And that's basically what I understood, what I feel based on my experience in the raid. And as a machinist, 2.5 is preferred, but I have my Savage Ring now, and I am using it. There's not really been much of a difference as far as I can tell, but I'm not really a fan of skill speed on machinist, but I'm holding out, so that's pretty much it. Like I said, I've said before, and I will say it again, I'm not a fan of forced downtime if the mechanic is not really impressive. And unlike High Concept 1 and 2, Dog 2 is very annoying. Like, I personally found that mechanic to be really annoying. Not only is it very extremely similar to the mechanic in the normal mode of the fight, and in the perfect universe, you won't even be seeing that mechanic. But I digress. Not much to say about part 2, honestly, except for the fact that it was really creative. It was amazing. I actively look forward to it each time I started P8S, and it's straight up one of my 3 favorite Savage encounters in the game. I love the boss design, the aesthetic, the mechanics, the music, the transition, and pretty much just everything about it. It was a lot more enjoyable for me than Hesperos. What ruined it for me though, or at least came really close to ruining it, was the PF shenanigans first. It was surprisingly difficult for me to prog through this encounter party finder, as people were just actively lying about their prog point, which never really happened to me in tier 1 with his sparrows. And after I struggled and got to enrage at long last, like in part 2, I had to spend almost an entire week with groups wiping on Dominion of all mechanics. And the thing is, like, I'm unable to see how you can get through the entire tier. And then also part 1 of P8S. Get to part 2, and then wipe on Dominion of all mechanics. Like, there are some mechanics that you just do. Mechanics that you just get instinctively, right? Limitless was one of them. Dominion was the other. So, yeah, like, it's just something I can't wrap my head around. Like, how do you get through all of that, all of the tier, and then derp out on Dominion or something? Like, of course, mistakes happen, that's perfectly fine. It's just something I'm really curious about, like, what happens. But again, can't really say anything about it. Digress. Still, my overall experience this year was amazing, and I'm really glad I got to experience it while it was fresh, and clear the tier as well. I may actually attempt ultimates at one point, or maybe I won't. I'll see. For now, though, all I'm looking forward to is 6.3 and the continuation of the Alliance saga, Myths of the Realm, Part 2, and honestly, just more MSQ, more story. The next tier is gonna be in 6.4, and till then, it's just chill, FF14 stuff with some PvP along the way. Plus, we've got some great games coming out. I'm pretty sure there was a leak, a data leak, something for Elden Ring DLC. Take that with a grain of salt. I haven't really looked that up, but one of my friends told me about it. Plus, Resident Evil 4 Remake is looking absolutely breathtaking, and I'm someone who spent a good few years of my life playing that one, like the original one. So really can't pass the remake, pass up on the remake. already got a pre-order, so looking forward to that. And lastly, Miles Morales just came out on Steam, so that's another title that I wanted to play but was unable to because of the obvious PS5 shortage. But at this point, I just don't want a console anymore. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video, my thoughts on the tier and everything. If you did, be sure to show some support. I really appreciate that. Let me know how you feel about this tier down in the comments, whether you enjoyed it as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.